On this horrifying day of October, we are looking at Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th series, Jason Goes to Hell. Step inside the cave, as today we are looking at a very old and cool figure from McFarlane. We are talking about Jason Voorhees from Jason Goes to Hell movie released in 1993. As you can imagine, this is a bit of an old figure, being produced by McFarlane in the year 1998. First, let's have a look at Jason's weapon of choice when it comes to slaughtering horny teenagers. We are talking, of course, about his machete. Jason's machete looks well made. It does have this kind of cool metal look finish on it, and there's also a few layers of blood present. Now on the top of it, it can see it has a more coagulated layer of blood, and then again we have also splatters on all the length of the blade. Something I really like about this machete is the way that the blade actually looks worn out. You can see creases and cracks along the cutting edge of the blade, and obviously this must be from extended use of chopping and hacking Jason's victims. There's really not that much to say about the handle of this machete. It doesn't really have that much details going on for it, and it's really nothing that special. One thing to keep in mind is that this figure is 20 years old. Now, considering this, this is a good looking figure, and I think it can easily compete with even today's releases. It looks pretty nice, it has overall a good amount of detailing on it. I personally quite like it a lot, and I think for the age of this figure, this is a very well made representation of Jason Voorhees. Having a closer look at Jason's mask and let's say face, we can observe that the mask does seem to be applied on top of his head. First thing you can also see is that there is an intact eye right behind the mask on the left side, and then, well, on the right side is pretty much just a hollowed space. One thing that I'm not really a great fan about on this figure is that the mask itself does seem to be applied over his skin. Now this is not at all movie accurate, as in Jason Goes to Hell, his mask has been worn for so long that actually the skin of his head started growing over the mask itself, and the mask looked embedded to his head. But in this figure, we can clearly see that this mask is over his skin and over his head. It almost looks like it could be detachable, but it's not. Now, otherwise, from not being quite movie accurate, the mask does look really good. It does have a good amount of detailing, and you can see some wear and tear and scratches on the surface of his hockey mask. There's also some trace of the chevron left up on top. Now that looks quite well. It looks suited for Jason. On the back of his head, you can see it looks like a peanut, or no, I think it's more his skin, and the straps of his mask over it just makes it look like some kind of chestnut or something. I could also bet, but although I really know, there is actually a face sculpt under this glued mask. Time for a closer look at Jason's body here, and one thing I really like is this ripped shirt that actually looks to be on top of his body and his skin, and pretty much the same effect goes to the back as well, where we can also see his skin through the ripped off shirt. In order to get this effect, the guys from McFarlane actually did a shirt out of tough plastic. It's quite resilient. I believe it would be far more appropriate to use something like more elastic or rubbery kind of material, but that's what they went for. Something nice is that they kept the same effect going to his hands and on both sides, and his pants as well, and I think it does complete the overall image of this figure. Zooming in a bit to show you something really cool, you can see his index finger through his glove right here. That's a very nice detail actually, and you can also see the end of his thumb on the other hand, and I believe that's a really cool detail. In the articulation department, this figure is, well, not quite excellent, and still you need to keep in mind that this figure is really old. It's 20 years old, and back in the day they weren't doing that much articulation on them anyway. The head can swivel, so Jason can have a look around, let's say, but not that much, and this is because his shirt, the material of his shirt, it's that resilient that it will not allow the head to make a complete turn. There's also some upward and backward movement possible as well. Now there is some degree of articulation to his hands, especially his right hand does have a swivel at the elbow, and also in the shoulder there is some upward and downward movement. Does allow for some, let's say, some posability. His hand does rotate, and this is rather good because this will be mainly his machete wielding hand. I would not really see myself posing Jason without his machete, so it's good that the right hand does have some articulation. Now coming to the left hand, we do have a swivel in the elbow and also some upward and downward movement in his shoulder. However, this movement seems a bit limited, and it also makes me wonder if the hand would break if I would try to bend it even more. However, there is a swivel in the elbow. It's a bit weird the way it works, but okay, it does have it. And there will also be rotation in the hand. Until now, there is a decent amount of posability and things do look rather good. Now there is some movement available in his torso, and you could move him from side to side, but again, that movement is limited by his shirt. Because the shirt is such a rough and tough plastic, it will actually impede this move from happening from side to side. And maybe if you would push, let's say, harder, you maybe could do it, you would be in danger of breaking something, and you don't really want to do that on your figure. Coming to his feet now, things don't look that good anymore. There is a point of movement to his legs, but because of the shape of the legs themselves being slightly bent, any way you would move his legs, it won't really look natural, or I would dare say it even looks funny. I don't think there's anyone out there that would pose this figure with his legs in a different position than he was actually intended to be. And that's mostly because you won't even be able to sit the figure on its legs if you do move them in any way. So that articulation there, I don't know if it's really useful in any case. Taking into account that this figure is actually really old, it's 20 years old, it does have some posability in the upper body area, and yeah, that's pretty good because you will actually be able to have some poses from Jason. Now, if I take his machete here and just gently wiggle it into his hand, just give me a second to fix this. Okay, the figure does look pretty good, and you will be able to do some poses with his machete in hand. In my experience with this figure, I do have two preferred poses, let's say. The first pose would be somehow with his machete lowered to his body, and then the other hand somewhat pointing to his victim. And I believe that looks rather good as a pose you could actually display this figure. Another way I found myself posing this figure, it's with his right hand a bit to the back, holding his machete up in the air, and making him look a bit to his left and lowering his left arm. Looks like Jason is ready to strike someone. This was The Collector, ladies and gentlemen, and today we were looking at Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th series, Jason Goes to Hell. An older figure, but nonetheless quite the impressive one. Now don't forget, if you do like the content on the Collector's Cave, do not forget to hit that subscribe button so you would be up to date with all the upcoming videos, and do not forget, we have a massive horror figure lot just waiting to be opened right here in the Collector's Cave.